guys, what is up? It's your girl Grace Torie, and I am back with a whole new podcast episode. I'm sure you guys are kind of confused if you're watching on YouTube. Why am I in a new space outside of my office? Why am I literally in my bed? Why do I look like I have pajamas on? I have answers for you, sis. So my dogs just have been super needy all day. Like, they wouldn't even let me go in my office without crying, and they're not allowed to go in there because that's where the bunnies are. And I also just wanted this to be like a casual chit chat, almost like a sleepover type thing where I give you advice. So super chill. I just wanted to hang out and talk to you guys. So that is why we are looking extra casual. My dogs are laying on both sides of me. So yeah, I'm super excited for today's episode, and it's not just because I just drank a whole coffee. It is because this whole podcast is based off of experiences that I'm learning and giving to you. And so I'm going through an experience right now, and I've had a lot of realizations while I've done that. And it's some advice that I want to talk to you about. So today's episode is going to be all about taking risks, going through changes, and just embracing this change rather than trying to stay where you're comfortable and resisting it. So without further ado, let's just jump on in. So I need to get my notebook ready. I took a lot of notes. Okay, so what kind of gave me this idea is last night, Josh and I were laying in bed, and Josh falls asleep like really quickly. That's kind of his thing. Like, once he hits the pillow, he's out. He very clearly does not have anxiety that keeps him up for hours like some of us do, aka me. But every night, I usually just lay there, and this is something I've been doing recently that I feel like makes a difference, but I usually just lay there and kind of take in like, wow, we have this house, we have family, and we have all of our pets, and just like, I'm so grateful for this life that we're building, that we've created. I'm so excited for the future. And I really just take a moment to be grateful for how hard we have worked in our 22 and 23 years and what it's amounted to. And then I started thinking about it, and I was like, wow, I wonder what people that we consider to be very successful, so for example, like Kourtney Kardashian and Travis Barker, MGK and Megan Fox, those celebrities that have that high level of fame and success in our eyes, I was sitting there and I was thinking, like, I wonder if they lay in bed at night and think the same thing. Like, I am so grateful for the life that we've created. I'm so proud of how hard we've worked to get us here, and just take a moment to sit with that, because like, that would be really cool. Like, and then I just started thinking about how cool it is that they've made this much happen. Like, they've had so many achievements in their lifetime. Like, we only get one lifetime. That's so wild. And you're probably like, what the hell, she's just rambling right now. But guys, I promise I have a point. Basically, what I'm saying is, we all get the same lifetime. So for me, I've spent 23 years on this earth, and my life right now is the product of those 23 years. Is it something I'm proud of, or is it something that I'm miserable or not happy, or there's things I would change? Like, that's what I started thinking, and that's what made me think about this episode, because I think that there was a time when I wasn't happy and I wasn't proud of the work that I had to show, or, you know, the product, the paint. I like to think of it as a painting. Like, this is the painting of the past 23 years of my life, and that's myself. So I myself in the art product. I don't know, that's kind of a stretch, but I know that a lot of people in this phase of their life either are really excited and happy with this phase and they're proud of how far they've gotten, and some people aren't so proud. And regardless, we're all gonna go through changes, and I wanted to just take some time to talk about that. So one thing that I really like to think about when I'm considering going through a change or taking a risk that I have a choice in, because sometimes we have to go through changes and we don't really have a choice in it. Like when you go to college, when I graduated college, going to get another degree really wasn't on the table for me. I mean, I kind of milked that pretty hard. I got 3 degrees and I'm like, I should probably slow down. So like, that wasn't an option. So I had to accept the change of graduating. Whereas going to college is a decision that you make, and you have the option to not go or to go. So what I think about in those situations where I have to take the risk and take the leap, and it's more of my decision rather than just a choice that I'm making, is what's holding me back? And this is something that I've really thought about recently in terms of my career. There's a lot of career changes that I've been going through lately, and a lot of things that have been put on the table as potential options for me. And I kind of thought to myself, well, I can stay in a situation where I may not be my happiest, but I have stability, or I can continue to grow and take the risk of something really bad or really good and life-changing happening. And one thing that really hit me that I think a lot of people who are my age can identify with is you're only gonna get more responsibility as you get older. So yeah, you may have to pay bills and you may have to pay for your dog's dog food and you know, their care, but in 10 years you're gonna have to pay for kids if you want them, or a bigger house, which means a bigger mortgage, or a car, whereas your car, like my car is the same car I've had since I was 16, so I don't have a car payment right now in terms of like paying it off because it's paid off. Like as you get older, you're gonna pile these things on top and you're gonna be responsible for more and more things. So if you have a risk that's gonna be like a career move or something that could be really good or really bad, you have the least responsibility right now. So if you're gonna do it, you need to do it right now. You could take the risk later, but if you want to mitigate some of that risk, it's going to be the least likely for you to have a horrible outcome. Not that you're planning for failure, you're never planning for failure, but you know, you're less likely for things to be as bad if you were to do it in 10 years versus now. So that's one thing I really think about. Something that I tell myself constantly is nothing changes until it changes. So if you're doing the same thing every single day, and then every single day you're going to bed saying, man, that sucked, or man, today was just not a good day, or you know, anything along those lines, what sucks about it? Dig deep and figure it out, and then think about how you can change it. Because if you're doing the same thing over and over, you're gonna get the same result over and over. That's just how it works. So nothing changes until it changes, and sometimes that change comes along all on its own, and sometimes you have to facilitate that change. But even if the change comes along on its own, you have to take it. You have to be willing to take that risk. So that's just things you really need to think about and consider. Also, what are you willing to sacrifice your happiness for? Because for me, like I mentioned, I was content. I wasn't upset. I was fine. But I had stability. And for me, I felt like I was sacrificing being happier for stability, and I was sacrificing growth for stability. And I wasn't willing to sacrifice my happiness and the ability to reach my full potential to be content and to be in a stable position. So just remember, if you're not happy, what is that worth to you? Are you willing to be in a job where you absolutely hate everything, but you have stability and you don't have to worry about taking risks? Or are you going to take your happiness into account and take a risk because there's the potential that you could be so happy it could be life-changing, and that's totally worth it to you? Also, do not, I'm telling you right now, if you're in a situation and you're not happy and there's no end in sight, so example, if you're a senior in college and you're graduating soon, that's not what I'm talking about. But if you're in a job where you feel like there's no light at the end of the tunnel, there's no promotion, there's no pay, what's the word I'm looking for, pay increase, anything like that that you're excited about, if it doesn't get you excited and you don't see a light at the end of the tunnel, leave. Do not stay in that position, because you're hurting yourself and you're not operating at your full potential, so you're hurting the company. Go somewhere where you can be your happiest, you can put out your best effort and give everyone the most effective version of you, because your job, you're taking a place from them where someone else can come in that loves that position and can give them a higher output. But I'm not saying to just go and quit your job today. That is not what I'm saying. We want to be smart girlies. We don't want to be irrational, impulsive. We want to be smart. We want to make sure our ducks are in a row. We want to be calculated. I feel like calculated has a negative tone to it, but it's not necessarily a bad word, if that makes sense. Like, being calculated means you're strategizing and you have a plan. So if you don't like your job, you are in a situation, a relationship, for example, where there's no end in sight and you're not happy, don't question if you should leave or not. Girly, leave. And make a plan. Make a plan. If that's breaking up with someone and making sure that you have things to fill up your day so that you're not just laying in bed, whether that's going to the coffee shop, hanging out with friends, whatever you need to do, getting a therapist in line, whether that's finding another job that aligns more with your interest and then quitting your job, make a plan that facilitates change and starts the domino effect for that new change to come into your life before you just cut ties and jump into the ocean and hope that a life raft comes along. That's so important. And I feel like risk is something that you can't fully mitigate, but you can to an extent. So if you're jumping into a situation where there's a lot of risk involved, it's okay to make sure you have padding when you land, if you land. But also don't plan for failure. There's a fine line. Don't plan for, oh, when this doesn't work out. No. Plan to be successful, but also be smart about it and make sure that you have stability. So for example, side hustles. Right now, this podcast is my side hustle. One day I would love for it to be a full-time job. That would be so fun, so fresh. I'm here for it. But I also have a full-time job so that I can pay my bills, I can go out with friends, pay for my horse's bills, things like that, because I need to make sure that my ducks are in a row and I'm not planning for failure. I still hope my podcast takes off, put so much effort into it, but I also am making sure that I'm mitigating the risk of something bad happening if I don't make income on my podcast, which I don't right now. So I don't know if this is the best example, but I think that makes sense. Okay, another thing that's really important is don't try to force things that aren't meant to be. And I think that there's a difference between trying and forcing when you just know. It's your gut feeling, it's your intuition. You know when something's not meant to be. And don't sit there and try and force it. I think that that's when you need to trust yourself a little bit more and say, okay, I tried, but I understand this isn't working, and what can I do to fix it? This also it gets easier as you become more familiar with yourself, and that's why it's really important to make sure you are aligned with yourself, which you can do through meditating, you can do through sitting alone with your thoughts, and that is challenging, especially if you have anxiety or depression or things like that. It's really hard to sit alone and be comfortable with your thoughts sometimes, but it's something that you can build up to. So you start with a few minutes and work your way up. Go for a drive with music on, and then eventually get to the point where you can go for a drive with no music on. Or maybe don't do that because the gas prices are really high right now, but go for a walk. There we go. Go for a walk with your headphones in, and then eventually get to the point where you don't have to wear headphones. Things like that, where you can find yourself and be comfortable with yourself and sit in silence and get back into alignment with yourself, because that's when your intuition is going to get stronger and you're going to be able to communicate with yourself. That is something that I can get into in a meditation episode, but it's so important when you are trying to decide which path to go down, what your life purpose is, and what's meant to be and what you're just trying to force that is not meant to be a part of your life for any longer. I believe everything happens for a reason, but I also know that I can feel it in my intuition when something should no longer be a part of my life, or it's time to move on to something new. A big motto that I have adopted that I feel like has really helped me, because I do struggle with anxiety. I tend to take life way too seriously. When something bad happens, I'm usually like, oh my gosh, what are we gonna do? The ship is sinking, we're all gonna die, da 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 da. So this has really helped me not take life as seriously and be like, well, redirecting our path. It's kind of like a GPS, like, oh, rerouting. But my motto has been, life's a game, learn to play. Life is just a game. Life is just a game, and you just need to learn to play it. So you can win the game, and that's when you're happiest and you're living your best life, or you can lose the game, and that's when you're not being true to yourself. And I'm not talking about being selfish, but I am talking about putting yourself first in the sense that you understand that you cannot help others at your highest level of potential unless you help yourself and you're healthy to the point that you can give. You can't give, or what's the term? You can't flow from an empty cup. You can't pour from an empty cup. So if your cup is empty, girl, you're not pouring into anybody's cup. You're trying to, but nothing's coming out. So that's what I'm saying. Like, life is just a game. That's all it is. It's just a game. Stop taking it so seriously. Stop beating yourself up if things don't go right, but also learn to play. Have some fun with it. If something doesn't go right, take another turn. Go another way. What's the worst thing that is gonna happen if something doesn't work out? You have to redirect. That's not the end of the world. Baby girl, the world is your oyster. Life is a game. Just play it, okay? Just make moves. That's all you have to do. Don't sit and think, gosh, I hope things change. No, sis, we're not doing that. You are moving. I don't want to use the example of you being a pawn, but like you're a pawn on your life game. You're moving, okay? We're pulling cards out, we're moving, we're making changes, we're taking risks. We are getting that bag. We are not sitting in the same free space and hoping that something happens, because it could happen maybe one day, but it's up to you at the end of the day to make your life this amazing thing. So stop being so serious. Something else, oh my gosh, this is something that has driven me crazy for so long, and I also have fallen into this. But life, you are not the victim. Every time something bad happens, do not get into that victim mentality. Girl, no. So I feel like especially women and some men grew up with this idea that we are a damsel in distress, that we're a princess, that we need someone to come and save us. We're not capable of doing it on our own. That's the narrative that's been pushed. I mean, you can see it even in Disney. When we grew up, my generation specifically, it was Ariel, it was Cinderella, it was Beauty and the Beast. Well, Belle is pretty self-sufficient, but there's these narratives that, yeah, you can do it, but there's always gonna be someone at your side to fix it for you. And that change doesn't really happen until someone else steps in and initiates that change for you. That's basically the narrative. Like, we're just waiting for someone to come along, sweep us off our feet, or fix the problem for us. And no. Simply no. That is just a no. Like, you are not a victim. When things go wrong, don't complain about it. I used to be the biggest woe is me. I would complain about everything. I would get so upset over everything. And I just woke up one day and I was like, wait a minute. It wasn't until I started dissecting my beliefs that I really realized my own power. And I think that people who grew up in a religion like mine, so I grew up Christian, I'm in the Bible Belt, so it's pretty common. And if you don't believe in religion, I think this is still relatable, which I'll get to that. But I grew up with the mentality that you can't do anything without God, which is true. Like, he created you, and you know, he ultimately decides if you go to heaven or hell, but there's more to it. Like, God made us in our image, in his image. Like, we're powerful beings. Like, I felt like if I didn't do everything this exact way for my life, God was gonna be like mad. And part of that is like the school I went to, my high school that I talked about in my previous episode, it was very Southern Baptist, so it was very strict, and it focused more on the vengeful side of God than the merciful side of God. And I didn't really get to explore that more merciful side and learn about that until after I graduated. But it was this constant pressure of, if you weren't this perfect little Christian, God is very vengeful and you need to stay in this very small bubble and do everything this exact way and don't take risks, just focus fully on this, or you're gonna go to hell. And that was literally like the pressure that was put on me from a very young age. So one day I woke up and I was like, wait a minute, I'm made in his image. God wants me to do all these amazing things. Like, he doesn't want us to be miserable. He doesn't want us to follow this cookie cutter thing. Like, yeah, there's some rules, like the 10 Commandments and such, but the whole idea that I'm supposed to wait around and wait for him to just fix everything, like, no, he gave us free will. Girl, you have free will for a reason. You're not, I don't know, I don't want to get too into it. Religion is a whole other topic, but like, you're not sinning because you're taking a risk in doing what makes you happy, and because you're putting weight into things like money and your salary and happiness and travel. Maybe you have a goal to buy a new car. I'm working on buying a new car right now. That doesn't mean you're sinning because you have those goals along with being a Christian. And I think that it really developed this subconscious thought that God doesn't want what's best for me, like what I think is best for me. Like, he doesn't want that. And I think that it's really important, and this is where it's regardless of your religion, whether you believe in God, whether you think it's the universe, it's always working in your favor. Whatever it is, whatever you believe in, always working in your favor. Not against you, for you. It wants what's best for you. It wants you to be happy. Why would those desires be on your heart if you're just meant to ignore them for the rest of your life? So it's going to work out, okay? No more victim mentality. That was kind of a big spin on victim mentality, but we're gonna go back to that. If you're just sitting around complaining, girly, nothing's gonna change. Not a single thing. Not a single thing. If you sit there and complain, it's actually probably gonna make things worse, because negative energy attracts negative energy, and we're not really, you know, whole other topic also. But I started saying something, and I said it to Josh one day, and I think he was shocked. He didn't even know how to respond, which for him is a lot because he likes to talk and always has a funny comeback. But it's a little bit vulgar. Not really. Okay, it's a bad word, but like, we're all adults here for the most part. But I looked at him and I said, we are not little bitch oriented, we are solution oriented. And having that mindset, girl, we are not little bitch oriented. We don't sit there and complain. We make shit happen. We find solutions. We are capable on our own. We don't need someone to swoop in and fix the problem for us. No. The growth happens when you're uncomfortable. The growth happens when you have to pivot. The growth happens when you take risks. And we want to grow. We want to become better people. We want to find the best moments in life, which happens in that growth. So I just wanted to talk about some changes or risks that I took that worked out for me to hopefully encourage you. So one big one is when I decided to go to school an hour away from home. Everyone at my school either stayed or they went to a really small Christian college like a couple hours away, but a group of them went. I was the only one who left and went to a non-Christian, like, secular college, and this was my first time in public school. And that decision to leave my friends and leave my family behind, even if it was just an hour away, was really, really hard. And I didn't know if that was a good idea, because I could have lived at home. I could have stayed where it was comfortable. I could have stayed with my high school friends. And while I love them, I'll cherish them. They always have a place in my heart. They're always welcome in my home, in my life. And while I love my family, and I'm still, you know, we're still really close, I see them all the time, leaving home was the best thing that ever happened to me. Other than the other risks that I took, which we'll talk about. But I experienced so much growth. If you are thinking of going to college, I encourage every single person to get a dorm room. I don't care if it's the same city that your parents live in. Move out, get a dorm room, spend some time finding yourself, because growth happens then. It doesn't happen when you're sitting at home and you go to class and then you come back home. Girlie, that's still high school. I am a firm believer that if you don't get out of your comfort zone, move out, growth happens when you don't have any other choice, because you're gonna immediately pivot towards that comfort. You're gonna lean on that comfort. But if you give yourself, like, if you put yourself in a situation where you can't immediately lean on comfort and you can't immediately run back home when things get tough, You're gonna grow and you're gonna become a way better person. So I can talk about that completely, but leaving home was the best thing that ever happened to me. I feel like I would be in a horrible place if I stayed at home, because even though I thought that my senior year I was the best version of myself and all of these things, that's not what actually was best for me. And I didn't know that until now, looking back on the person I am now and the person I was then, the amount of growth that occurred. The next thing was leaving a really toxic relationship, and it took me years of people telling me, hey, this is not healthy, hey, this is toxic, hey, this is abusive. And I would say, no, it's not. You don't know what you're talking about. No, it's not. And I wasn't happy, but I thought to myself, well, what else would I do? What else am I gonna do? I'm gonna stay in this relationship. What do you mean? And eventually I just got to the point where I couldn't do it anymore, and I wish I would have done it sooner. But the minute that I broke up with this person, my life changed for the better. And this is the other time where this is the best thing I could have ever done for myself. I experienced life, and I felt my age, because I talked about the whole situation with my mom having cancer and having to grow up really fast at the age of 16. And it's still something I struggle with having to sit back and say, Grace, you're only 23, you're not 35. You need to learn how to have fun. You need to not be so serious. I mean, I was going out with friends. I was learning social skills that I never learned. I was becoming my own person, learning my own beliefs and establishing my own beliefs, exploring my spirituality, exploring who I am. And I didn't do that until then. And it's the best thing that ever happened to me. And that's when Josh came into my life, and I would have never met him, and I would never be where I am now if I hadn't have taken that risk. Because hindsight, I don't know why I didn't do it sooner. I think about it sometimes, but right now, like in that moment, it was really hard. It was taking a risk, it was accepting a change, and it was hard. But looking back, it was the best thing that happened to me. It was hard, it sucked, but on the other end, it was worth it. So what I was saying, and that I keep repeating over and over, is that growth happens when you're uncomfortable. If you don't take risks, nothing changes if nothing changes. You're not gonna grow, you're not gonna change, you're gonna stay the same person. And comfort's okay, but don't you want to grow? Don't you want to reach your higher potential and find the amazing aspects of life? Because life is happening outside of your bubble, and it's just so crazy to me that people be okay with accepting things for how they are and not wanting to grow, which I have been that person, and I know like what it feels like, but I promise you it's so much better. Like I mentioned, what's the worst thing that's gonna happen? You're gonna have to change course. Girly, you got this. It's not the end of the world. Another thing that I kind of touched on is everyone really teaches you to be scared of the world. I feel like from a very young age, we're taught these are the consequences. Don't do this or this is gonna happen. Don't do this or this is gonna happen. Just stay comfortable. Don't take risks. Get up, take a 9 to 5, get married, have kids. Don't do anything outside of that, because risk. Eliminate risk. We don't need that. That's what you're taught your entire life. And people who break these boundaries, until they're successful, they're frowned upon. Until they turn around and say, hey, I have $1 million now, everyone looks at them like they're an outcast to society, and that's so horrible. That's shitty. But what I'm saying is, don't be fearful of those risks, because the magic happens in those risks. Don't be fearful of the world. It's an amazing place, and it's our playground. This is our game board, and it's your move. Like, take the world by the reins and make it your bitch. That's what I'm saying. But like I mentioned, it's really important that you make sure you meditate and you ground yourself every day, and you're aligning yourself with your purpose daily, which I can talk about in a different video. But you need to make sure that you're in tune with your intuition, so that when you're making these decisions, you're making decisions that are best for you, and you're not really getting the interference of everybody else. I kind of talked about everything else, but I also just want to touch on again, like, it's not bad to put yourself first. being selfish has always been taught to you, especially if you grew up in a religion, that it's wrong. And I think that there's a level of healthy selfish. Like I mentioned, self-care, making sure that you're filling up your cup so that you can pour into others. There's a line between selfish and selflessness where you can balance. It's not you're fully selfless or you're fully selfish. You should be balancing somewhere in between and making decisions that are best for you. An example of this is if your friends invite you to go out and you know that you can't and you're not in a good place mentally and you need to recharge, don't say yes to bail on them when it actually happens. Like, don't say yes knowing that you're gonna say no. It's okay to put yourself first and say, hey guys, I need a night to recharge. I'm really just feeling the week. It's been a hard week and I just need a night. There's nothing wrong with that. Lastly, this is kind of on the topic of don't force things, but trust the timing of your life. God has put amazing things in store for you, or the universe, or whatever you want to call it, and you just need to trust the timing. While change is great, everything happens for a reason. So don't try and force things that aren't meant to be. Trust the timing of your life. And you'll know when changes and risks come along. You know in your intuition and in your gut when it's something you're meant to seize, and that level of intuition, you know when it's just anxiety, and you know when it's something you're not meant to be doing with your intuition and your gut feeling. You know, I can tell the difference. I can help you tell the difference if you're having a struggle with it. We can definitely talk about that, but there's different levels of intuition that we're working with here. And you know, when things come along and you need to take that risk, you'll know, versus when things happen and you know it's not meant for you. But don't force anything. Don't try and force things into existence. Just put yourself out there. So my last thing that I want to end on is a challenge for you guys. Well, I am going to post an Instagram picture and it's gonna have this challenge on it, so you'll see it. It'll probably be the most recent post, but depending on when you listen to this, you'll be able to tell in the caption. But I want you to comment one way you are taking a risk this week. Whether that is going to a coffee shop and reading instead of sitting at home so that you are around more people, whether that's taking a job or something more extravagant like that. There's so many risks you can take, big and small, in your day, and I want you to be seizing those. So definitely comment that, and I can't wait to have a conversation with you about it. So if you're looking for my links to follow me on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and I think that's it right now, then all of the links are in the description below. I thank you so much for watching. I love every ounce of support that you give me. If you don't mind clicking a like, sharing this podcast episode, or following, subscribing, depending on what platform you're on, I really do appreciate it. I love you guys so much. I'm so excited for this podcast, and I can't wait to talk to you guys more and more. I have new episodes every single Sunday and Wednesday. Like I mentioned, if you want to join in on the fun, I post on my Instagram almost every day. I'm posting on TikTok quite a bit, so definitely follow me on there to join the community of gals that are all working on becoming our own version of that girl. But like I mentioned, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I will see you in my next podcast episode. Bye, guys.
You was the first